I would like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order for Monday, April 7th, 2025. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we've got a few items to cover in executive session this evening. May I have a motion to go into executive session? Mike moves, Sarah second, all in favor? We'll be back. Could I get a motion to return to open session? Mike moves. Marcy seconds, all in favor? Okay, we are back in open session. I know we have a presentation, Marnie, hi, how are you, on stormwater manual revisions. If you don't mind, I'd like to just briefly move old business on dog enforcement strategy up to the top because they're looking for a fine structure. Do I need a motion to move that up? We're going to get to you in a minute, Joe.
Yeah,
Hold on one second.
okay.
Yeah, all right. All right, okay, Monica moves, Marcy seconds, all in favor? Okay. So old business first, discuss dog enforcement strategy and fine structure recommendation. You'll recall from our last meeting that we voted to ask the RTM to amend Appendix D in our town ordinances, which deal with fines for violation of any of our town ordinances. There is not an ordinance in there specifically dealing with really animal violations or dogs off leash, that type of thing, despite the fact the ordinance refers to that ordinance that says there's a dog leash in Appendix D. No,
there's no fine in Appendix D, but there is a...
Well, that's what I'm talking about. The ordinance refers to that.
Right,
and
right.
There's no fine actually in Appendix D that refers, that says here's the fine that the ordinance refers to. So we've asked the RTM to come up with a fine structure for that. They've asked for a recommendation. So, yeah, I know you talked to multiple Great Island Committee members today, and do we have something that we can talk about to recommend to the RTM?
So, yes, so as you remember, the committee moved it, the dogs were allowed on the property, not in the bridle trail area, and had to stay on the paths. So we adjusted the rules, so now dogs are allowed off the paths wherever humans can go, except for in the bridle trail area where they're not allowed anymore at all. And we changed the time frame for that ordinance to start to June 1st, right? June 1st. Yep. During that time, we were going to look at a fine structure and also identify areas on the property, like the beach area, identify areas that longer term wouldn't be where dogs would go. So I spoke with John and I got a kind of a sense from the committee. I would say it's pretty much, we have 9 people and it's kind of, we have some people that believe the fine should stay the way it is, which is right now the animal control officer can write a citation for dogs off leash because that is in our town ordinance. They can't write a citation for dogs in the bridle trail area. That is not an option, but they can write for dogs off leash. It's $25 and there's a state admin charge of $24, so $49. Some people, I would say a third of people felt that that was enough. I would say another group felt that $200 was more appropriate. And I think the thinking there was that, we've been talking about, and I'm sure this committee, I'm sure this board has talked about dogs enough. We've been talking about dogs now for a while. We do continue to, we have cameras in the bridle trail area, so we know of course we have cameras all over the island, so I don't want people to think that we're not keeping an eye on what's going on out there, but we're actively monitoring what's happening in the bridle trail area. We had, since the end of the year, 57 dogs in that area. There are no dogs allowed. We've had 15 dogs off leash. Again, no dogs in that area, definitely not off leash. And we also had 2 dogs that were in the eagle area off leash, which is a big problem. I'm happy to say that Tony has pictures, and I believe that our eagles are happy and have connected with each other, and I think things look really good out there from the Eagle baby scenario. So anyhow, we have, we're looking at like $200 or plus on one side, $50 on the other side, and then in the middle, another group of, I would say $100. So that's kind of where we're at. I think my own thinking is, this is entirely within everybody's control, right? If you don't have your dog off leash, you shouldn't really, the fine won't impact you, right? Because you're adhering to the rules. So I think, an education idea, I was talking to Rolf earlier, and I think an education idea is a great idea, although there will be plenty of people that'll say we've been talking about dogs now for a while. We have a leash law on our books already. So this will just be closing that loop and putting a number to it. And I'll stop talking.
Reactions?
And this will be applicable to all of the town parks, correct?
No.
And this is just for Great Island?
Yeah, this would be applicable for Great Island. It would be applicable for town property. So, but I believe that the Park and Rec Commission will be taking a look at this themselves. But this would be like, for instance, Greenwich has a $100 fine, right? But they have they don't allow dogs in Todd's Point, except for like 4 months during the winter. So they have a separate fine for that. So the Park and Rec would do that for their properties. This would be applicable for walking down the street, downtown, for Highland, for Great Island, for town-owned and managed properties.
Okay. I mean, I know when you had asked, I was one of the people that had said, well, let's keep it the way it is at 50, and that's whatever, 25 and 25. I understand that when we were talking about increasing the dog presence on the island, that we also, many of our members voted for that, wanting to send a message. So I don't have a problem with increasing it over $50. I mean, maybe 100, but I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable anything greater than that.
Than 100?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we have different fines for the bridle path and the island?
You know what? I think I think that's a lot of admin.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think it's important, right? We have different parks in town where dogs are, it's more common to see dogs off leash.
Yes.
Let's just put it that way. So I think this is an opportunity right now. This is a new property, and I'm hoping that people will recognize that we feel strongly about Great Island, and that is not in the same as some of those other parks where people maybe, the rules are whatever. So I'm hoping that, we have a number that we can all agree upon that sends, a pretty strong message. And remember, again, you never have to pay this. It's not like, we're charging people to take their dogs to Great Island. We're just asking you to not let your dog off leash, so.
I have no problem with people taking their dogs off leash in an area that's very clearly marked, do not let your dog off leash. I know that we have areas in our parks that are during different times and different, seasons that they're allowed off leash in different areas and different sections and so forth. I don't have an issue with how people have acted in good faith and in the other parks. I have an issue when we have clearly marked, do not let your dog off leash, and people have been doing it regularly. With the Eagle area and the bridle path, that's a problem. I think $100 is fine for a charge. I think we need to do a really good job about putting signs up. I think it would be helpful to have some kind of officer or somebody there explaining these. I think if we are only relying on an occasional visit from someone who is doing the enforcement or cameras, I think it's not going to be as effective. And I think we do need to think about a policy where in parks that we do not allow dogs off leash, or if there have been issues with dogs off leash, then we need to really talk about it. I think part of the problem is we don't have the same policy everywhere. And we are not enforcing in all parks, and I think we need to, I think having the discussion is important, but I think we need to look into it deeper.
Yeah, I think that us acting on this will be a catalyst for Park and Rec. That's my instinct.
What is the liability that we have? Is this area federally protected with the Eagle's Nest? What sort of liability do we have if we are not following federal guidelines as a town by not enforcing it and not making it hurt our residents if they don't follow that law? I mean, that's my concern. Is this a federally protected property at this point with the Eagle's Nest?
That trail has a sign, and on the sign it says $100,000 fine.
That's my concern.
Yeah, from the government, but
I mean, I think we're in good faith trying to
Right.
adhere to the federal standards, so I'm not concerned that how much we make, this fine is going to move the needle in either way. We're going to have a fine. We're going to, we have personnel who are tasked to enforce it, so I think that we're, doing what we should.
There's not a long, heavy track record of aggressive fines for stuff like this. I mean, you can be, but there's not a lot of record.
There has not been.
Let me propose maybe the following. Why don't we do this? We'll recommend to rules tonight a $100 fine plus the $24 administrative fee. I like Sarah's points about reminders and communication about this. I think the mere fact that we've passed a $100 fine will have some deterrent value, and that we might actually decouple this from sort of when enforcement starts. I mean, obviously, we want to get some signs out that say what the fine is, that type of thing. Make sure this gets passed by the RTM. They may have comments on the enforcement and rollout of this as opposed to just the fine itself. They can set whatever fine they want, but this is what we recommend. Why don't we do that? Sound okay?
I think it sounds great, and I want to thank the RTM because these new rules go into place June 1st, and for them to proceed on this and move this forward, it helps us. So.
Okay.
I will agree with the $100 fine, but I personally would like it to be much higher. But
Well,
that's, I'll go with this,
the
but
fact is
in my
if we-
support, I think
if
it
we
needs
see
to.
serious problems, kind of to Sarah's point about people just not paying attention, we can revisit this.
Well, we've seen people not pay attention,
Right.
so
Well, no,
we've
but-
had that. So, but you know what? This is a good start.
Let's try.
Okay.
Let's try.
$100 plus the admin fee, whatever that is from the state, and hopefully the word will get out. My gut is that people, once they hear there's a number and maybe somebody gets a ticket, that should help things
Okay.
significantly.
Any other discussion? Motion to approve recommending a $100 fine to the RTM.
With any administrative costs on top of that?
$100 fine, which will total for a violation $124 given the current administrative, or $129 given the current state administrative costs attached to those fines.
I would just say any
Right,
admin.
plus administration costs,
Yeah,
that's
because I'm
fine.
not
That's
sure.
fine.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay, could I get a motion to approve that?
I'll move.
Monica moves, Sarah seconds, all in favor? Terrific. Can you text that to Seth?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll text it to,
Seth and me. Okay. All right. Joe, thank you for your patience. We will go now to an update on stormwater manual revisions. Joe Canas with Tighe Bond. Thanks for your patience, appreciate it.
Oh, sure, thank you. Good evening. For the record, my name is Joseph Canas. I'm a professional engineer with Tighe Bond. We were retained by the Planning and Zoning Department for the development of a new stormwater management manual for the town. And essentially what the stormwater management manual does, it serves as the technical background that supports your stormwater management regulations. So a little history, why a new manual? The existing town's manual is 22 years old. It was developed in 2003. And it predates the development of the zoning regulations, Section 880, which were enacted in 2008. And also since that time, since 2003, the state has issued 2 of their own stormwater quality manuals since Darien's original manual was issued. And the reason why Darien has its own separate manual is, like a lot of municipalities in Fairfield County have also adopted their own manuals. It speaks to some of very site-specific or community-specific issues that have been identified, and also discusses certain documentation standards as well that are unique to the individual communities. And as you can imagine, a lot has changed in 22 years, and stormwater management is no different. Technologies are different. There's more of a relationship between stormwater quality and stormwater quantity. So we're really looking at both in tandem more than we used to. And the other reason is, as we've, Ed and Jeremy have done their technical reviews, and I've also done some on behalf of both the Planning and Zoning and Environmental Protection Commissions. We've identified some issues that arise frequently in these technical reviews, and the manual also helps address some of those issues that have arisen. So what's new with the manual is we've shifted the focus to be more site development and residential development oriented. The original manual was more oriented towards larger developments. We've shifted that focus to really reflect the balance and the workload that the departments see, the types of projects. We're also better aligned with the state stormwater quality manual. So we're picking up on that 22 years of expertise and change in the industry. And then we have some Darien-specific issues that we're trying to address. First is swimming pools, how those are handled, basements and sump pumps. We're also certification language at the beginning and the end of a project that the engineers sign off on. And we're also requiring the use of the latest precipitation data. The old manual actually refers back to precipitation data that was developed in the 1970s. Although most consultants have started using the updated data, now we're just putting that in writing. So one of the changes that we're making currently under the zoning regulations is that if you have impervious area, so anything paved, like an addition, a patio, if it's over 1,000 square feet, you have to file a stormwater management report. What we found is other communities in the area, such as Greenwich, Stamford, and Trumbull, they actually have a lower threshold. And if you think about it, 1,000 square feet is pretty big, right? So we're proposing to lower it to 400 square feet, which aligns us with area municipalities. And 400 square feet, that's still a pretty big patio. That's 20 by 20. So anything less than that, you wouldn't need to come into the commission and provide a stormwater management report. So some of the specific things that we're addressing with swimming pools, what we found are a lot of swimming pools, they're proposed without any patio around the swimming pool. So basically it's just coping and then lawn. So one of the things that we're doing is we're having the applicants design for, what we propose to do is have the applicants design for a future patio so that they don't have to upgrade their stormwater systems later, or that they don't put in a patio after the fact without a permit. So at least that additional impervious surface is accounted for. So here's just a quick example. If you have a 20 by 40 pool, sometimes what we'll see on the left in that image, just coping, landscape all around it. On the right, the manual will require the applicant to evaluate an assumed patio 6 feet around the pool. And there are various different exceptions to that. If there's already a patio in the area, there's some credit for that, that's allowed. But that's the basic concept. The other thing is, this is essentially how, next issue is how pools are modeled in terms of hydrologic modeling. We've seen consultants handle that differently. What we're proposing is, a unified approach, right? In the winter, pools are covered, right? So when it rains, water rolls right off of them. So we're going to treat that as impervious cover going forward. The other thing is basements. Darien is different than some of your surrounding communities in that the groundwater here is notoriously high. So what we found is a lot of homes, are proposed with 12-foot basements that are 8-9 feet in the groundwater. And you'll have to have a sump pump running continuously to water that. And the issue is what becomes of that water that's discharged. It's a constant discharge, and as you're well aware, the town does have various flooding issues. So what we provided some additional guidance on how that should be handled. Primarily, if you pump it out of the ground, you should create an infiltration system to put it back into the ground. There's also, there's a table in there, or a chart, I should say, that kind of guides applicants through some selection options. The first is avoidance. You're trying to reduce the basement height or raise the house. But failing all that, create a separate system for the pump discharge. Now, there are certain cases where there are exceptions. Like, for example, if a house, already has a sump pump, it was built in the 40s, 50s, it's had a sump pump forever, it's connected to the town drainage system, we would still allow that, right? Because that's an existing connection. And that's subject to the director of, the discretion of the director of the DPW. The other thing, this is pretty technical, but basically provides some guidance in terms of the amount of rainfall. We guide into the website that should be used, as well as how that rainfall gets distributed. And this comes actually from the state manual. And the reason why we're so focused on precipitation depth is, as you well know, the intensity of rainfall has been going up. So that's what we're trying to address here with that. There's also a section on climate change. There's no requirement to design for climate change, but we do encourage our applicants to review that and see what the impacts are. There are already some certain safeguards that are built into the regulations that will continue. For example, the fresh meadow approach, which is basically if you have a residential property, not even just residential, but if you have a property, there's an existing structure on it, existing business, existing house. If you can completely raise that property, that structure, and you build it brand new, there is a requirement for your existing conditions. For the basis of your existing conditions analysis, you have to assume that that property was not previously developed, so you can't take credit for impervious coverage. That's kind of a unique aspect of the Darien regulations, and we're not proposing any changes to that. We did propose some clarifications. For example, if you're tearing down the house but you're leaving the driveway in place. So we are proposing some clarifications there. And then we're just providing some additional guidance if applicants want to review sea level rise as well. The other thing is deals with the catch basins. Very exciting. We're limiting in some properties to see catch basin, during a catch basin, do another catch basin, and so on down the line. Sometimes what that does, that leaves the system prone to clogging and overflows. So we're trying to reduce that. The concern is, what those overflows have on downstream properties. So here we are proposing a limitation to the number of inlets that can be connected in series. This graphic here shows on the left side there's 3 connected in series, highlighted in red. The manual proposes limiting the number of connections to 2 in series, and then having to go to a manhole to avoid resuspension of sediment that's collected in the sumps. Stamford has a requirement that you cannot connect catch basins in series at all. We didn't necessarily think that was practical for some of the more residential uses that we see here in Darien, and it doesn't necessarily need to go from inlet to manhole, or catch basin to manhole. It could be a smaller junction box, but this is to reduce the amount of sediment that's transported ultimately into the wetlands and water courses from the stormwater systems. And then the last piece that we're providing some additional guidance and clarifications on are certifications. At the conclusion of a project, the Planning and Zoning Department receives an as-built drawing as well as a certification from the engineer. And from what I've seen in my reviews, as well as what staff has seen, are as-built, the certification language varies widely. And what we're trying to do is trying to standardize that a little bit more to help facilitate the reviews, so that on both ends, so that the applicant understands exactly what is expected of them, and also so that staff can complete their checklist to make sure that all the required certifications have been done and all the plan elements are that have been approved are in fact constructed. So some of those things, in addition to the standardized format, we also ask the applicants to clearly list any deviations from the approved plans. Sometimes that gets mentioned in the letter, a lot of times it doesn't, and staff has to find that out when they do their site inspection. So that's a quick overview of what we're proposing. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Sarah?
I want to go back to one of the comments that you made regarding existing connections from 1940, 1950 that were going to be grandfathered in. My understanding was any connections that were discovered that were tied to the sanitary sewer system needed to be changed into the stormwater sewer system.
Correct.
Is that not accurate?
No, that is accurate. And actually, that is one of the exceptions that is allowed.
Okay, I'm hopeful that
Yes.
is the
Yes, it is.
requirement. Okay. And then I guess I had a question on, and I don't know, this may be more of a discussion, but regarding the sump pump discharge, I know that for a lot of homes that have fully finished basements in an area where the groundwater is very high, which apparently is in most of the town, there is a constant outflow of stormwater. And I think is there a standard by which people should be discharging the water? I think it's, some folks have had it in their front yard, it goes down the sidewalk or their neighbor's lawn or the street, they try to put it into the, maybe a cut through the sidewalk. I know there's one around the corner from me that you had to deal with. They cut through the sidewalk to get it down to the street because the drain was not very close at all. So is there some kind of standard by which they're going to be suggesting it goes in the backyard, it goes in the front yard? I mean, it's very difficult.
It's going to depend on, they'll have to dig test pits around the property, right? And infiltrate, so basically underground chambers.
Right.
Where the soil tends to be the best, right? So that could be in the front, it could be in the back. But it would discharge back into the ground. So the systems have to be sized large enough to infiltrate back in.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of outflow with some of these, and there's no ability for some of this underground systems to manage some of that type of water.
Right, and then there's some other things that the applicant has to. I mean, if the house is built already, right, that could be an exception, right? Because you're not going to have somebody, fill in their basement for that. But for new construction going forward, right, what we're looking to do is encourage applicants to stay above the groundwater table as much as they can. Yeah. Right, which is not always possible in every case. So that's why we do have exceptions built into here. There's a whole process in the manual that outlays, can you raise a house? Right. Can you lower the basement height? And it steps you through there.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So, Joe, I had a question on the catch basins and the two connections to the main. So, or maybe Ed, for you, like, what are we going to do? This is for new construction, right?
That's correct.
Right. So, are we looking to address that, those multiple connections now, or is...
As part of existing systems going out and changing them?
Yeah.
Not at this time, no.
No, okay.
Just going forward?
It will be.
Okay.
Our drainage designs for those projects include these criteria as well. And new development, new site construction will have these.
And what's your time frame for delivery on this?
Okay, so the next steps are, after tonight's Board of Selectmen meeting, we'll go before Planning and Zoning in May, potentially EPC as well. And then this will be enacted, I believe, July 1st is the target date currently.
Have you guys, two questions for me. This sounds like it affects commercial and residential development planning. Does any of this impact the town's planning for upcoming storm projects? And if so, are the current designs and process compliant with what you're proposing?
For example, the inlet connection in series, we've incorporated that into, for example, the Salt Box Lane project. And I believe Ed just said that that's for all capital projects going forward. We'll adopt that standard.
Okay. And then second, do you have a sense of how much this, even at a high level, raises costs for people who are trying to develop properties or build homes? I mean, we talk about housing affordability, and this is an important thing.
Right, yeah.
It feels like this makes things more expensive.
Right. On a pool project, it could be, obviously it all depends on the scale of the impervious surface that you're proposing. But, Jeremy and I had discussed this previously. We're thinking maybe about 5%, worst case, 5 to 10, somewhere in that range.
the total cost of a project could be 10% higher because of these changes.
Well, it's scalable, right? It depends on, the size of the project that you're doing. For example, I think the example that we figured was like a $100,000 pool project. This probably be another $3,500, $4,000, somewhere in that range.
Okay. Not trivial.
No,
So Joe, that's to put the actual 6-foot border around, or that's an addition?
that is, no, this is for the additional stormwater management measures.
Right, okay.
I think that's important, but I'd urge the Planning and Zoning Commission to just be eyes open about these costs. These are all top of mind in an environment where we have increasing trouble with stormwater, but at the same time, we also have affordability and everything else, and these affect developments that are designed to be affordable, and it just makes it that much more difficult. So I would urge the commission to take that into consideration. Other questions for Joe? Do we need to sense of this board? This is all planning and zoning, right?
This is all planning and zoning. This is informational for you.
Yep. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. I appreciate it,
Thank you.
gentlemen. Thank you. Okay, next up, first Selectmen's report. So first thing I would like to do is welcome a member of the audience. Mr. Josh Kaufman is here with us tonight. Josh is taking over as the Director of Finance for the town of Darien, replacing Jennifer, who vacated that role to take on her current position. And I don't know, Josh, you want to say a couple words? We're certainly happy to have you here.
Sure. Thanks for having me. No, I'm just very excited to jump in. It seems like a great team that Darien has here, and it's a great town. And there's a lot to learn, and I'm just very excited to kind of get the ball rolling. I'm happy to start at a very quiet time in the year. So
You did that, right? One of the things maybe we take a vote of the board to officially rename New Canaan as training ground for Darien talent. Since
I don't think that's a good
I'm sure they would.
Oh, no, okay. I'll withdraw that
I would,
motion.
yeah.
Deanna Carson's
Against
listening, I
that.
will hear from her. So, since you both came from New Canaan, I think that's terrific. But anyway, we're excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the job, and you haven't run fleeing yet, so his first day, he's still here.
No, it's my pleasure.
But look forward to having you and your contribution. So the only person who's possibly happier is Jennifer Charnes. Anyway, welcome.
Well, thank you so much.
Happy first day.
Yeah, thank you.
First day. Okay, other things on my list. I attended the QPR training, which stands for Question, Persuade, Refer. This is a suicide prevention program that is put on by Human Services and was led by Ali Remstek on March 27th, and it's superb. If you have a chance to do that, it's really educational. It's not that long, it's about an hour and a half. It's a combination of lecture and scenarios, and I got a lot out of it, and I just want to thank not only Ali, but everybody who supports her in the delivery of these kinds of programs, so it's terrific. The other thing I had a chance to do was to attend the next day at the Mather Homestead, the Women in Architects at Work. And there was an interesting presentation followed by a roundtable that had some really just terrific professional architects there, one of which was Kate Perez, who is one of the architects on the Genovese project for Corbin 2, and it was just great to listen to them provide their perspectives about how they think about that, and it's just another great reason to sign up for programs that are put on by the Mather Homestead. Heather Raker is full of energy, and I just thought it was great. Couple other things is, there's a new video I've done. It seems that the one on the Darien train station was well received in terms of information delivered in a digestible volume. So I've done another one, this one on the bridge and dam over at Rings End, and that'll be released tomorrow. So hopefully if you have any questions about it, let me know. If anybody has topics that they would like a short 5-minute explanation of that we could do like that, I'm happy to do more of those. But thanks to Ed and Darren, they helped me with the technical details on this project, so more to come on that. On April 2nd, I attended an Interfaith Seder at UConn Stamford. Senator Duff and Senator Marr were there, as well as probably 75 other people from all different religious faiths and backgrounds. And it really was, I think it was the first one that they'd done there. It was really terrific to get everybody there to share in that dinner and to share perspectives. We heard from a lot of different people, and it was it was quite impressive, and I was happy to go there. Last thing is two things. This past weekend went to the Oktoberfest in April fundraiser at the Noroton Fire Department, and I just wanted to thank those guys for putting on a completely ridiculous fundraiser with this Oompa band and this whole thing. There were a ton of people there. Everybody had a great time, and it was for a good cause, so I really like all that stuff. And the last thing I did was today, I went out and up to Newtown, Connecticut, and I had lunch with Jeff Capacey, who is the first selectman for Newtown, and I got a tour of the town and had a good sense for how things work in Newtown, from town government, their budget process, how they handle certain things, and it was just very informative to go see that and tour around and see how things are done there. That my objective with that is to do those meetings and see what we could learn here in Darien that would be useful. So thanks to Jeff for having me there. It was a terrific visit. He is first rate. That is all from me. Any questions about that from anybody? Okay. All right, next up is board liaison reports. We will start with Sarah.
The Thriving Youth Thriving Youth Darien will next meet on May 15th. I think I reported in the last meeting that we had here on their last meeting. They do have an upcoming event on April 9th. It's at 7 p.m. And there's two different sessions. It's called One Pill Can Kill. And there is a 7 p.m. presentation, and there is another one a couple hours later for the adults. So the earlier one will be for students, and then the later one will be for adults. So that
Where's that being held?
at the depot.
Depot.
And it's being put on by the YW, Depot, and the Thriving Youth Darien. And then for the Hanley Homes and Royal Building Committee, the next meeting will be on Wednesday, April 23rd.
Okay, terrific. Monica.
At our last Great Island Advisory Committee meeting, Reed Hildebrand shared their early ideas for Great Island, how people might move through the island, where quiet areas or gathering spaces could go, and how to reuse a few key buildings. Sorry about that. They also flagged basics like parking and restrooms as early priorities. So it was a 3-hour meeting, and I thank TV 79 for taping these, and I encourage you to either look at the greatisland-ct.gov.com website or watch the video. There's a lot of information there. We've had over 850 people participate in these first 3 community engagements in person, and we've had about over 5,200 surveys returned, so that's terrific as far as response goes. We'll have one last 4th community engagement meeting in May. It's scheduled for May 17th. On May 20th at 7 o'clock in the Darien Library and the Museum of Darien are hosting, it's architecture time, are hosting architect and Yale professor George Knight for a public talk on the history and design of Great Island's buildings. And George Knight and Associates are working with our consultant Reed Hildebrand, so I'm very familiar with what's going on there. And our next Great Island meeting is this coming Wednesday. It's a Zoom only, and you can get the link from the town website. That's it.
Thank you. Marcy.
Perfect, sure. The Mental Health Task Force is meeting tomorrow in this room at 10 a.m. So we'll get some updates on some things happening for the spring. I know that Allie wanted to do a QPR training at least every 2 months, so I will see what she has scheduled. Hopefully she has something coming up in May or June, and I'll make sure that I can get that date out. Highly recommend anybody who has not taken that yet to do it. It's a very quick course, but it is a really good resource to have if you have someone who's going through a mental health crisis. The other big event that's coming up is the high school. We're sponsoring the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention Out of the Darkness Walk, which I think this is going to be their 3rd year where they're hosting it at Darien High School. It was one of the only high schools in the state that ever had this event, and it's been incredibly successful. It's a really healing moment for our students and certainly for everybody in the community. If you want to register for that, you can go through the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, just go through their community walks. You can put our area code in, and you can register there, but I'm sure that we can probably do some promoting maybe through our town newsletter. But a lot of sports teams and organizations throughout Darien are doing fundraising. Last year we raised a tremendous amount of money for suicide prevention, and I hope to see those results again this year. So.
Okay. Mike?
Blight Review Board has not met since our last meeting, but we are meeting this Wednesday night, so we'll have something next time.
All right, Jennifer, are there anyone requesting public comment?
No.
No public comments. Very good. All right, new business. Discuss and take action on the creation of a Darien Blooms Gift Fund and authorize the expenditure of donations. Jennifer?
What you have in your packet is a gift acceptance request completed by the Beautification Commission, but this is related to their Darien Blooms initiative that they presented to you last week, or last meeting. The big fundraiser that they want to do is selling bricks, redoing that brick patio next to Darien Fire Department, and with the excess funds, putting them into a gift fund that they can use for maintenance, improvements, that sort of thing on their other properties, around their other gardens. And they've also been contacted by some individuals and some businesses who would like to donate. So this would set up a gift fund that would allow us to accept the donations and then to expend them over time for maintenance of the gardens. I think on the brick fundraiser, they're expecting about $25,000. They're not really quite sure how much that's going to bring in, but if it's $25,000 for that plus the individual donations, it does go over the $12,500 threshold, so this will go all the way through the RTM.
I caught that it was a longer period of time, but that's why because they're going to use the funds for other things, not just the brick walk.
Right.
Got it, okay.
Questions for Jennifer? I just want to thank in advance everyone who's going to be buying a brick there, but also just want to do a special shout out to the Beautification Commission. They really are engaged on all of this, and they're going to make a difference not just on that, but on the ideas that they presented to us earlier. So kudos to all the folks who are there. It's much appreciated. Okay, could I get a motion to approve the resolution creating the Darien Blooms Gift Fund and authorizing the acceptance of donations? Monica moves, Sarah seconds, all in favor? Okay, great. Next item, discuss and take action on a request to approve the annual run for Ukraine. Jennifer.
They are looking to do their run on May 11th. I think this would be the third year that they were doing this. The race would run from 8:30 to 10:30. It's a 5K run or walk around Pear Tree Point Beach. They expect 200 to 300 participants, 20 to 30 people staffing and volunteering it. And the town roads affected would be Rings End Road and Good Wives River Road. The police department has reviewed this and they have signed off on it, and final approval would be from you.
Yeah, this is similar to what they've done in previous years, and a good cause for those folks, so I'm fine with it. Anybody have any questions, Sarah?
Timing-wise, was it done on Mother's Day last year?
No.
So I think we need to just give the residents of that area a heads up that they won't be able to be driving their cars on these streets. It's Mother's Day and people may have plans.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yep.
Is this, I see Whole Foods, is this sponsored by Whole Foods?
That I don't know.
Okay.
It's a sponsoring organization. Maybe they're providing some refreshments. Okay. We certainly can ask them to make sure those residents are alerted. That's a good suggestion. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Motion to approve the proposed Ukraine run on May 11th. Mike moves, Marcy seconds. Okay. All right. Next up, discuss and authorize the first selectman to execute the addendum to the State of Connecticut permit to transplant shellfish from town waters and the Town of Darien Shellfish Co-Management Permit.
You have the resolution that we got drafted from Curtis Rinkerhoff, and you also have in your packet the addendum to the State of Connecticut permit and the Town of Darien Shellfish Co-Management Permit, and I believe we have Mr. Masterson here to answer any questions, because this is not one that I quite understand.
So if I understand what this is that apparently they had a permit. So this is Jennifer LLC, this is the Freight's Fish Market that's right over on the post road next to Papa Joe's, between Papa Joe's and the liquor store right there. So that's where it is. These guys had a permit to do shell fishing that expired in 2023. So this is a renewal of their permit, retroactive to the time when the prior permit expired, and similar to permits that we've done in the past, as far as I can read. But Marty is going to enlighten us. So Marty is on the Advisory Commission on Coastal Waters. I appreciate you coming here this evening.
Of course.
Can you give us a little more clarity on exactly what the situation is?
Certainly. So there's two documents that you have before you. One renews every year and is attached to generally the time frame that the freights have their state license in effect, which is every year renewing on July 1st. That allows them to go into Scotts Cove, a restricted relay area from the shellfishing ground map, pull shellfish, clams, oysters, whatever they find in there, move them to a conditionally approved area, or like out in a little more open water where they can grow in cleaner water and then be harvested at a later date. As part of that agreement, the freights would give back 10% of that harvest to the town recreational shellfishing beds, which are right off Contentment Island and right off of Great Island. And that permit, for whatever reason, kind of lapsed, and the last, I believe it was effective, was in 2022. So that's been coasting, for lack of a better term, for the last few years. However, the state has never revoked it at all. It's been kind of a dog-eared on their license just to continue approving that. So it really comes down to the town to reinstate that. The co-management permit actually refers to a separate area, which is south and west of Long Neck Point, kind of by Smith Reef over there. That was originally authorized, the most recent one was authorized in 2021. Prior to that, I believe it belonged to a different entity, Tim Kramer perhaps. And when the freights took over that lease area, it had apparently, this is what I'm told, is that it had been fished to death and that there was really not a whole lot in there. So, in fact, and this is all very new news as of this evening, they don't even list that lease area at Jennifer LLC. They don't list that lease area on their permit anymore. So we're going to table the shellfish co-management permit. That is no longer needed to be reviewed because it's kind of a non-issue at this point. They're not even fishing that. So really the only thing that needs attention is the addendum to the state permit. I worked with Bobby Bernie to update that language. It's the exact same.
This draft here.
I'm sorry?
That's this draft here that we've got.
Yes, correct. That is a one-year permit that rides along with the dates of their permits or the dates of their state license. In the past, it had been a calendar year thing. For the sake of ease, we're trying to line it up with the renewal of their state permit. And this would retroactively approve what had been done since 2022, and basically set them up until June 30th of 2026. So we wouldn't have to revisit this until essentially another year from now. So as to avoid approving something tonight and coming back in June.
Is there any reason these permits are for a year? So in other words, we look at this, and I could certainly sign this on an annual basis, but the reality is we don't have the insights to know whether all of this is in good order in terms of their compliance with this. I would note that we did go out on a boat with his drone, and he taught, this guy's a drone genius, by the way. And we did the population of the beds that were over there by Scotts Cove and off Great Island.
Right.
And that was great. So it looks like they're in compliance even though their permit had lapsed.
Right.
Is there some reason that this has to be 1 year? Is that a state requirement or?
No, I mean, it's all a little new to me as well, but
Okay.
I'm kind of keeping in step with what had been done in the past.
I'll tell you what, why don't, if we renew this year, if we come back next year and it's for a year permit, think about whether this could be a 3-year permit or something like that that wouldn't require such regular attention unless it's necessary for taking a look at it.
I agree. I think it shouldn't really require too much attention every year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to a 3-year thing.
Okay.
As part of the Coastal Advisory Commission, we are thinking about how those beds off Great Island will potentially be accessed, and maybe this is something that we could liaison in the future, but you know, there will, when and if there is some access allowed to that bed right off of Great Island, that might mean more shell fishing activity, in which case perhaps we figure out a different way on how we reserve some in that Scotts Cove area to be placed on those beds if they start getting depopulated a little more quickly.
Okay.
I think we all saw that there's quite a bit of claims on the shellfishing beds from town, but there's not a lot of people going out there.
No.
And especially if you need to be on a kayak or a boat of sorts. So there's a lot of clams out there, if anybody's watching.
Questions for Marty? Monica?
Yeah, Marty, so I was looking at these, and I was a little bit, like the acreage, it's 24.85 on the permit, it's 23.9 on the addendum. So trying to figure that out. Sometime, and one, it's an option to mark, the other, they're required to mark. In one, it's 10%, in the other, it's 50 bushels, although I think that's a typo. So, like, how were those changes decided? And are they material changes? Did Coastal Advisory have something to do with that?
To the best of my knowledge, no. I believe that was, I mean, we're going back to 2021. That would have been prior to my time on the commission, so
Okay.
I can check in with, perhaps it was David Kahn at that point, but I think, I'm not quite sure, to be frank with you. The differences between the two permits, they're two different areas, so the acreage will change.
Okay.
The acreage in Scotts Cove is different than the other, which is just kind of south of the main Darien Harbor.
Okay.
So that's one thing that's different. The bushels versus the 10%, I think at that point was generally what the harvests were looking like from those two areas. It sounds like today getting 50 bushels from the other area is sort of difficult, and if that were to be the case, then that would almost be the whole harvest, which doesn't really serve the permit holder very well. So I think that's another reason that if they're not even fishing that, we don't even worry about that for now, and when the time comes that they do decide to take that lease back over, we'll revisit the terms and maybe draft up something that's similar in kind to the addendum that we're looking at for the Scotts Cove area.
And is the coastal, somewhere I also saw monitoring the harvest for the year. So you're looking for a report on how much they seed the beds, but you also at some point kept track of the total harvest.
Yep.
And I don't see that in the new, you're not really worried about that?
I'll double check it. It should still be in there to provide a daily record of harvest. So every day that they're in there, which isn't going to be every day of the year, but whenever they do go in there, keep track of the harvest that they took and compile all those, and those get submitted to the town. In this case, on the new permit would be June 30th.
Okay, it's not in this one. Okay,
I'll double check with Bobby tomorrow.
okay.
Thanks for bringing that up.
And so we are tabling the co-management permit, but we would vote on the addendum to the state of Connecticut permit. To Monica's point and her sharp eye on some of the discrepancies between those two documents, do we need to have that rechecked before we get this signed up? Or maybe we approve this tonight, subject to any of those types of corrections in here before I sign it, something like that.
See what Mike's thinking.
Mike, what do you think?
I think your point is well taken. I just to understand the operation of this permit, so Jennifer LLC, when they sign it, they're representing that during the last period, they were in compliance with all the regulations. Is there something that gives us some sort of option if all of a sudden we discover that they represented that they were, but then we find out that there's some big problem that there's a problem with the beds and that they weren't?
I think the only way we can police that, and I'm thinking off the top of my head here, so
That's okay. Yeah,
is
thanks.
if, as they're normally prescribed to do, submit that log of the daily harvests, which on the old one was for May 30th, but we aligned it with June 30th to coincide with their permit, their state license renewing. So in theory, they should be submitting that log of daily harvest from that area in May of this year. If they do not, or if it doesn't look like everything's copacetic, then I see your point there.
Well, it's just, like, I'm a big fan of the concept of no harm, no foul, but I just want to know that there's some sort of remedy, for the town in this permitting, or otherwise, why can't we just say, well, you know what, you didn't have a permit then, so hopefully it was all right, and now you have a permit now, but it's like we're rubber stamping whatever their activity was over
Right.
that last
Sure.
period.
Right.
So I don't know if that's,
Perhaps, maybe I'll go back to Bobby to kind of rework that language.
okay.
To not,
Yeah, maybe we should look
you
at
know,
this
because
again.
what's done is done. And I see your point. You know, you don't want to just go back and say, that was all fine.
Right.
So the things you noticed, plus Mike, those are very good points. Maybe to your point, let's have Bobby take another look.
Yeah, we can come back to you with a cleaned up draft and
Yeah,
then,
that's fine. There's not urgency to this, correct?
not really. No, I mean, I would just like to have it, something
Okay,
official.
no, that's,
Appreciate that,
Yeah.
appreciate your work in trying to get this
really.
done.
yeah, that's great, Marty. Sarah?
These beds don't abut any private beds, do they? These is all public?
No, anything beyond Scotts Cove is like restricted. No, nobody's allowed to be in there
Okay.
to take anything out. So
Okay.
this is pretty exclusive rights, just to the Friends.
All right, anything else? All right, so we will table this until next time when you're ready. You'll let Jennifer know, and we'll get this back on the agenda when you're ready.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Marty, if you want to call me too, I can tell you whichever ones I noticed.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Marty.
Thank you.
Okay, next, discuss and take action on a restated appropriation and bond authorization resolution for the Noroton Heights Fire Department retaining wall. Jennifer?
So in March, February-March timeframe, it came before you for the $2 million appropriation and bond authorization for the Noroton Heights retaining wall. That was approved by you, Board of Finance, and then ultimately by the RTM on March 17th. However, when searching town property records, it revealed that none of the work to be done is on town property. It is all on property owned by the Noroton Heights Fire Department. As such, the bonding resolution has to be restated to mention that they are a 501c3 and that the funds for the retaining wall are a grant. It's considered a grant to the department. When we actually issue the bonds, they will be the ones who will have to sign the tax regulatory document for that portion of the bond issue. They're aware of that and they're comfortable with that. So what we're asking for tonight is your approval of the amended and restated bond resolution. Doesn't change the dollar amount, just adds in that they're a 501c3. This is considered a grant. We are able to bond this even though we don't own it because it is a public benefit. If that wall were to fail, there would be disruption to fire services. There could be damage, negative impact to Noroton Avenue. Public Works would have to go in and shore that up to protect the road. So there's a public need to do this project, which allows us to bond it even though it's not our property. On the deed, there is, when we looked into it, the town transferred ownership in 1953 for $1. And there is on the deed a requirement that the department must notify the town if at any time it wishes to convey or transfer the property. And the town would have 90 days to purchase or acquire the property per what's on the deed as it stands right now.
Would this go back to the Board of Finance and the RTM for reapproval?
Yes, yep, it would have to go through all three.
Questions?
So the deed language is not new, it's what was in the original deed? Okay.
Questions on any of that for Jennifer? Okay, motion to approve the amended and restated resolution appropriating $2,006,100 for costs associated with the Noroton Heights Fire Department retaining wall, and to authorize the issuance of bonds and notes in that amount, and to refer that to the Board of Finance for its approval. Mike moves. Monica seconds. All in favor? Okay. Last item on new business is discuss and take action on a request to approve a contract with the Darien Dispatchers Union. Jennifer.
While I summarize this, I'm going to try to pull up the memo that I sent to you that I forgot to print. It's been a day. We negotiated, the dispatchers were previously part of the town hall union. They requested and we agreed to have them come out of that union and form their own bargaining unit because their needs, their working conditions are very different than the rest of the town hall bargaining unit. It wasn't it wasn't a good fit. It was very hard to come up with a contract that met both of their needs. So there, as being part of the town hall contract, that expired on June 30th, 2024. We've been working with the dispatchers. For the most part, the contract is the bones that was the general items within the town hall contract, but we were able to now make it the whole contract specific to them. So most of the conditions are the same. The wage increases are 3% retroactive to 7/1/24, 3% on 7/1/25, and 2.8% on 7/1/26. The contract will expire on 6/30/27. For health insurance, we have the same arrangement that we have with other bargaining units, which is offering the higher deductible plan of a $2,500, $5,000 deductible. For those who elect to take that plan as an enticement, their employee cost share is frozen at 11%. For the others, they go to 12% in the current, in 7/1/26. I think they're held at 12%, 7/1/25, they go to 12%. I think they're held at 12% for 7/1/26, and then they go up a percentage on the last day of their contract. We started doing that because contracts usually aren't settled on 7/1, and we never had the opportunity to retro back the insurance cost share. So we've put that into all of our contracts, that on the last day of the contract, there's one more step up in their health insurance. Those were the big financial items. There was a change in shift differential. Previously, they only had a shift differential of $1 on their midnight shifts. We looked at other towns. We went up to $1.50. It does put us on the higher end comparatively, but it's about $4,000. Kind of along with that is an agreement with them that at the discretion, that the midnight shift can go down to minimum staffing of 1. So if somebody's out, calls out, or is on vacation, we may not have to fill that, but that is at the discretion of the chief. So he'll have the say based on how busy of a night it is, or those kinds of things. So we may actually not have the full $4,000 cost from the midnight shift differential. We did also add in an evening shift differential. That's a very common one amongst the other towns that we looked at. So that's going to be $1.50 per hour. So again, that's about $4,000 impact. The other items in the contract, we clarified their overtime, mandatory overtime order back procedures. And we clarified some language around protected vacation time off. And those don't have much of a financial impact, but we do think that it'll help with recruitment and retention. We also think that them being their own bargaining unit and having a contract that is specific to them will help with recruitment. A lot of potential new dispatchers, when they go out on the website, town website, look at the contract, and this is not very clear that there's a dispatcher-specific contract. There's language in there that we do think will help with recruitment and retention, because we've had a problem with that. So those are the big items of the contract.
Questions? Sarah?
Have we put aside money that we anticipated paying out from this retroactive pay raise?
Yes, we have money in the employee salary set
And
aside.
we've covered that, or do we need to?
I haven't done the math on it, but because we are down 3 right now.
We should be fine.
I'm pretty
Okay.
comfortable that we're fine.
So the salary increases, do they differ from other unions?
No, they're consistent with what we agreed to with the town hall.
They are, okay.
Which we approved back in the fall.
Okay.
They had 1 more year on their contract, but the first 3 years are the same as what this contract is.
So the major differences are more these $1.50.
The
It's very
differentials.
specific to them.
And,
Okay.
yeah, and then the wording around clarifying the order back procedures and some overtime language.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. Could I get a motion to approve the contract with the Darien Dispatchers Union as negotiated? Mike moves, Monica seconds, all in favor? Thank you. Old business we've done. 2 transfers. First one, discuss and take action on a request to transfer $11,169 from Board of Finance Capital Reserve to replace Freightliner project. Edward.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Ed Gentile, Director of Public Works. The transfer you see in front of you for the Freightliner, it's gone through a couple iterations with regards to funding. FY23, $225,000 was funded for the purchase. I asked for an additional $75,000 the following year. And now we're at a point where we're ready to lock in the price, and we got some additional costs passed down to us from the vendors. So what you're looking at now are costs due to delays and equipment purchases. And what I'm talking about is specific items that we require on the truck. And the vendor has been at times reluctant to give us or produce or even put in the price. So we're finally getting around to now we're actually building this truck to what we want it to be. And this $15,000 will push us over the edge to get us the truck ordered.
And what truck is this, by the way? Is this
It's one of the large
dump trucks or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this
And
is,
I just want to clarify, you said $15,000, but the transfer request says
$11,000.
$11,169. I just want to make sure that you get the right amount that you need.
Okay. I have the one that says 15. Is it 11?
The one in
That's
our
in the most-
package says 11,169.
I know, I must have changed it after Brian gave me some numbers, because the old one I have sitting in front of me right now.
This one is dated March 25th.
Okay, this is actually dated the same, but
but Ed, does this include, you said there are 2, there was a cost, just an escalation, and then you said
It
you
was.
added some, maybe the escalation?
the additional funding that I'd require is the additional cost to buy these trucks after COVID had hit, getting material, getting deliveries of everything. And if I reviewed it and changed it to 11, then I've made that change knowing that that's all I need. I may have grabbed the wrong paper. Vacation will do that to you. I don't recommend going on it and coming back for a night meeting.
Yeah.
Tan, ready, and rested.
Next time, grab the lower one.
I'm sorry.
How about for Board of, can you just confirm the amount for Board
Yeah,
of Finance?
yeah,
If
yeah.
it needs to be 15, they can do 15.
What, do we do 15 and they can cut it to 11?
We can do it either way.
We should do 15 and they can cut it to 11.
Yeah, I'll do that.
I think that's easier for them.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Is it over 15?
No.
The number I have is 15,169.
So we should do 15 and 69.
Okay,
Thank
can
you.
I
Sorry
get
about
a motion to recommend the following transfer for approval by the Board of Finance, which is a transfer from the Board of Finance Reserve to the Replace Freightliner account in the amount of $15,000.
What, $15,169?
$15,169, which we would invite the Board of Finance to confirm with the Director of Public Works. Monica moves, Sarah seconds, all in favor? Okay, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
All right, next transfer up is discuss and take action on a request to transfer $4,214 from the Board of Finance Capital Reserve to the Mather HVAC system upgrades. Jennifer.
So the transfer request you see is to eliminate the existing deficit after we've completed all these projects. There were actually 3 that we did over in the Mather Center, 2 HVAC units and 1 cooling unit. What ended up happening, we had some change orders with the changing in the Freon in one of the units, and one of the failing HVAC pieces of equipment that we came across while we were doing the project we had to replace. So we pushed us over our budget. Want to close the gap right now, if we could.
Looks clear to me. Questions for Ed on this? Okay, could I get a motion to approve and recommend to the Board of Finance a transfer of $4,214 from Board of Finance Reserve to the Mather HVAC system upgrades account? Monica moves, Mike seconds, all in favor? Okay. Terrific, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Again, I apologize for the numbers.
Okay, we're not quite ready for the reappointment of town council, but Mr. Burke has an update on that. Summarize where we are.
Yes, so we're in the process of speaking with Wayne and his firm about a new agreement to have them working for the town for the next 2 years. We are asking for a concrete estimate of what they propose as their hourly rates for this 2-year period, and also engage in a process related to delineation between retainer and non-retainer events and some other guidelines to assist us in better tracking and understanding our fine legal work that we have been getting, expect to get for the next 2 years.
Terrific. Any questions for Mike? All right, appreciate their efforts on that. We will pick that up at our next meeting and hopefully get that finalized. Next item, review and approve the minutes for the March 24th, 2025 regular meeting. I've been through those and did not have any edits. Does anyone have any edits to those minutes? Motion to approve the minutes from March 24th. Sarah moves, Marcy seconds, all in favor? Okay. Agenda review. So flood update is my next video after the Rings and Bridge video. Flag redesign, we had the survey results. I'll try to put that on the next agenda. One thing that we did, the top 3 flags from the survey, we have made into flags. And we're going to put them on the town flagpoles and let people see what they look like. So more to come on that. They were just some nylon renderings of that, and so we hopefully we'll have them this week. So I'll bring them to the next meeting and let's take a look at them, and we'll get some pictures of them up on the flagpoles and see what people think. Does anyone else have anything for agenda review they'd like to make sure we cover?
No, just to that, it'll be great to see it on the flagpole, but we won't really see the flag, so it would be great to see it unfolded, flat, so we really can see what it looks like.
Oh yeah, I'll bring them
Put it
here.
somewhere.
We'll have them, absolutely.
Okay.
And I've asked Harris to think about how we could publicize this as opposed to surveys and that sort of thing, but get people out to see what it would look like flying, displayed. We're thinking about having some posters in town hall.
Perfect.
Not a gigantic deal, but just say this is what we're trying to do, and I'll put it also out on the town newsletter, and maybe we can do a video of those things up on the flag, so flagpoles, and just get a sense for what people think.
Great.
Okay, so more to come on that. Upcoming board meetings, so we have a virtual meeting on Monday, April 21st. That'll be followed by the joint department head meetings the following morning. Kudos again to Sarah for thinking that we should separate those. I think that makes great sense. Thank you again for that. And then our next in-person one will be on May 5th. Unless there's anything else, could I get a motion to adjourn? Sarah moves, Mike seconds, all in favor? We stand adjourned. Thank you, friends.